Despite the Equal Pay Act of 1963, which was aimed at abolishing wage disparity based on sex, women are still paid less than men. Even in 2012, women who are employed in full-time jobs outside of the home earn 77 cents to every dollar that a man makes. Women have to work 16.5 months to earn what a man makes in 12 months. Now, many critics charge that the difference in wages between men and women are simply a matter of personal choice, that women make choices to work in lower-paying fields, and women choose to lose income because of family responsibilities, like taking time off to care for their children. But there have been studies done on the topic, and it shows otherwise. The gap in wages cannot be explained away, even after accounting for education, occupation, industry, hours worked, age, and ethnicity. The wage gap is real and shows clearly a systemic discrimination of women in the workplace, who are again relegated to second-class citizens. So what is being done to fight the wage disparity between men and women? Currently, there is legislation being considered in Congress to expand the Equal Pay Act of 1963 in the form of the Paycheck Fairness Act. The Paycheck Fairness Act would make it easier for those who are the targets of wage discrimination to address the issue, allowing employees to disclose salary information with coworkers despite workplace rules prohibiting disclosure. Additionally, employers will be required to show that any wage discrepancies are based on genuine business requirements and are not based on gender. The bill would also prohibit retaliation by companies against individuals who raise wage disparity issues. So what can we do? What can we do to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed? What can we do regarding equal pay for women? Well, there are many things that you can do, but before I get into the specifics, I just want to proclaim that women are powerful. Despite the way we're treated and despite what we're told, women are powerful. We make up 51% of the population in this country. We are the majority, and we have the power to change society. Specifically, how do we do it? Well, activism is the key. Our system of government is supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, not just some of the people. So the best way to exercise your power is to become actively engaged on both the state and national level regarding legislation. Find out who your state representative is. Find out who your congressional representative is. And then at both the Virginia state level and the congressional level, tell them you want the ERA ratified. With regards to wage disparity, contact your congressional representative and tell them to vote for the Paycheck Fairness Act. But those are not the only things that you can do. Another important thing to do is look up your state and congressional representatives' voting record and find out how they voted on bills that affect women. A good resource that you can use for that is Project Vote Smart. It's actually very easy to find on the web. And don't stop there. Go and tell your representative what you think of their voting record. And tell them what you think. Tell them what you think of your job performance regarding women's rights. Remember that your representative is supposed to work for you. Now, if you're unhappy with the job your representative is doing, then vote them out of office. Voting is a key way to exercise your power and fight for women's rights. Vote for candidates that actually fight for women, not just say they will and then take office and do exactly the opposite. And what else can you do? You can run for office. And if you don't want to run for office, then find somebody with the passion and the drive to fight for women's rights and get them elected. And lastly, work together to fight against the war on women. It's going to take all of us to change our society from one that treats women as second-class citizens to a society where women and men are equal and have the same rights as men. Thanks again, and continue to fight against the war on women.
Written in 1911. We still need to sing it today, unfortunately. It was written by a man. And thank you to everyone who's here today. This is a nonpartisan issue. Women's rights is a nonpartisan issue, and it's an issue for women and men alike. As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill lofts gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sodden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, we battle too for men, for they are women's children, and we mother them again. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starved as well as bodies, give us bread and give us roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead go crying through our singing their ancient call for bread. Small art and love and beauty, their drudging spirits new. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we go marching, marching, we bring the brighter days. The rising of the women means the rising of the race. No more the drudge and idle, tender card while one reposes, but a sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies, give us bread and give us roses. So I'm calling an audible, and I'm changing. This next song is called Why Don't You Listen? When Will You Learn? Each time you come back with your head in your hand, I try to help you the best that I can. I got a feeling that this wham ain't gonna turn. 'Cause why don't you listen and wait? women's rights. Why don't you listen?
Okay, another one for you. You don't want me to come out there, so let's hear it. What do we want? Choice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Choice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Choice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Choice! When do we want it? Now! I wanted to say, well, the favorite sign I've seen so far today.
Today, in spite of the inclement weather, I love your passion and your enthusiasm. And while, yes, I am proud of having served as a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, the thing that I am most proud of and the reason that I am here today is because I'm the mother of 2 daughters and the grandmother of 2 granddaughters. And I am passionate about women's reproductive rights, and I'm passionate about the women's strike force. A very active Republican. But, you know, even though I've been a Republican all of my life, I could not run for office as a Republican. You know why? Why couldn't I run for office as a Republican? Because I support women's reproductive rights. So I ran for the House of Delegates as an independent, and I won. I defeated an incumbent right-wing extreme Republican, and you all can do the same thing. Just go out there, run, defeat them. We've got to get rid of all of these anti-choice Republicans and Democrats. Today in the Commonwealth of Virginia, there is not one Republican elected official that supports women's reproductive rights. Not one. In the House of Delegates, there's not one in the Senate. And of course, don't forget our favorites. Good old Governor Ultrasound, our famous governor. And our not so very famous Lieutenant Governor, who's always ready to be the tie vote, to vote in favor of restricting women's reproductive rights. And then we have the infamous Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli. He is the overseer and master of the abortion clinic regulations and any other regulation he can come up with, anything to restrict women's reproductive rights. But isn't it amazing to watch all of those limited government, individual freedom Republicans? You know the ones, they're out there saying, get government off my back, get government out of my wallet, get them out of my business, and by all means, get them out of my health care. But they obviously think it's okay to limit freedoms when it comes to the role of women. Roe v. Wade has been there probably for many of you most of your life. But when I was growing up, it was not there. And I am concerned about the role I am concerned about the future of women's reproductive rights, because you know it's possible to outlaw abortion without ever overturning Roe v. Wade. And we know that all of those anti-choice Republican legislators are out there. That's their goal. That's exactly what they want to do. And I've watched them. They maneuver, they manipulate, they control, they camouflage bills so that when they slip them through, they can add an amendment. They ignore testimony at committee hearings. I even watch them laugh at important graphic pictures. And then what do? They high-five at their successes. Successes that hurt women. Do these legislators think that we're going to forget when we go to the polls? No! We will not forget. I've been watching these so-called limited government individual freedom legislators chip away at Roe for years. From parental notification to parental consent with notarization to conscience clause for hospitals and doctors to 24-hour informed consent to regulating clinics as hospitals and unfunded forced ultrasounds. And we already know what's next on their anti-woman agenda, don't we? It's the personhood bill. Life begins at conception bill. Are they really planning on outlawing birth control and in vitro fertilization? What are we going to do to stop this madness? I know what we have to do, and you know what we have to do. The so-called limited government, individual freedom Republican legislators have moved further and further to the right, and now I think it's time to move them right on out the door. And that's exactly what the Women's Strike Force is going to do. Join the Women's Strike Force and help us recruit, support, and elect pro-choice legislators. Thanks again to all of you for coming out today. And thanks for your support of women's reproductive rights and for the Women's Strike Force. Thank you.
Send me a form answer. She actually sends me a personal answer back. I've even popped into her office a couple of times and said, hey, got a minute? And she had a minute for me. And she's here today. She's our next speaker. Please welcome Virginia Delegate Jennifer McClellan.
Look, I want to thank you all. First of all, I want to thank you for coming out. I got to be honest. This is the kind of day, I don't know about you, but I prefer to spend this kind of day curled up on the sofa with a cup of soup and a good, trashy TV show or novel. But this shows you how important these issues are, that you would come out here, rain, wind, whatever, to show your support for women's reproductive health rights for women, and to say to the Republicans, we are not going to stand by while you try to turn back the clock a century, basically. And, it's not just the general, I'm going to talk about the General Assembly in a minute, but we've got an election coming up this year in less than 200 days. And if you think that Virginia is the only place where this war on women is going, it's happening in Congress, and we've got candidates who want to take it to the next level. Today, you're going to have a debate between the Republican candidates for the United States Senate where they are going to try to outright each other.
Oh, God.
One of those candidates has said, oh yeah, personhood is such a good idea, we should put it in the U.S. Constitution. Well, we've got a candidate for Senate on the Democratic side who is here today. Former Governor Tim Kaine, who is here today to say, Governor Kaine is here to say that he trusts women he trusts families to make the decision decisions that they think are right for them, he does not think it's government's place to insert itself in the most painful personal decisions that women and their families have to make. And you know, what I tried to do this year, you know, a couple years ago, you probably know, I made history becoming the first woman in the House to have a child while in office. Well, that made history for two reasons. And those that know me, well, the minute I found out I got pregnant, I researched everything that could possibly happen. And it opened my eyes to the fact that abortion laws don't just impact the stereotype that the Republicans want to talk about. They impact every pregnancy, every single pregnancy, from the moment you find out you're pregnant to the moment that that pregnancy ends, either in the delivery room or somewhere else. But it also made history because my doctor literally had a captive audience in a legislator sitting in her office where she could say, let me tell you the practical impact of these bills. Because how many of the 140 members of the General Assembly do you think had a clue the practical impact of their bills? I think it says something that we needed Rachel Maddow to explain to us what the ultrasound bill did. Well, some of us didn't, because Charnel Herring, who you'll hear from in a little bit, and Vivian Watt, on the subcommittee that first heard that bill, they tried to explain it. They sent a picture. They passed out a picture. And the men on the other side of the dais, oh, no, we don't need to look at that. We don't need to look at that. Well, what is this? Well, this is what you're about to legislate. On the Senate side, we had two senators who knew what we were talking about. Ralph Northam, who's actually a doctor, and George Barker, a healthcare professional, and they understood what was going on. But in the Senate, you know, they like to be a little more genteel, and they didn't want to offend the sensibilities of any of the pages. So they tried to explain in a way that the other side would understand, but I guess they were too stupid to understand the words they were trying to tell them, so they didn't get it. They needed Rachel Maddow to call them out on national television, and then they said, oh, we didn't know that was in the bill. Well, read it! And let me tell you, ask your wife. Let me tell you, what was frustrating to me, someone who has had an ultrasound of many types, the men in there either didn't go with their wives when they had theirs, or they weren't paying attention. And this is what's frustrating, is you have people who are trying to legislate their view of morality, who don't understand medicine or science, who have probably never been in a position where they had to decide, make these decisions. And yet they're going to impose their view of what's right and wrong on a situation that they know nothing about. And then here's what's even more frustrating. So Charnel and I told them, along with some other people, that I got to tell you, we miss Catherine Waddell because she would have told them. We miss Robin Abbott. She would have told them. But Charnel and I tried to tell them, and then some of them would say to me, some of the more moderate Republicans who knew better, one of them caught me in the elevator and said, well, you know, Jen, I know you're right. I hate that bill, but I got to play the game. Well, guess what? You are playing games with people's lives. It is not a game, but they are so afraid of the right. They are more afraid of a challenge from the right than they are doing the right thing. We are here to tell them no more. So you already heard from the strike force. We need you to help us find candidates who get it. We need you to come out and vote for these candidates. And we need you to hold them accountable when they don't do what is right. And I got one other thing. How many of you came out and voted in 2008? How many of you came out and voted in 2009? How many of you voted in 2011? All right, well, this crowd is probably a little more not quite the norm, but you tell your friends who came out in 2008 but didn't come out in 2009 and 2011, the 2012 General Assembly session was brought to you by those folks that stayed home. Because in Virginia, every election matters and has consequences. And we saw what happens when the Republicans take control of everything. Even when their governor told them not to overreach, they did, and he didn't stop them. He tried to fix things, and he really only made it worse. And the only reason he tried to fix the ultrasound bill is because he saw that it was ruining his chances of becoming vice president. Well, and it did. So that's one good thing that came out of this bill was Bob McDonnell is never going to become vice president. So with that, I have talked enough. You've got more exciting speakers to hear from, but the last thing I will say is we did fight back and defeat personhood this year. We did defeat House Bill 62, the cruelest of the bills that would have forced women who can't afford their own health care to carry pregnancies to term that they know are not going to end well. We did that because people like you came down before the protest. People like you came down and told their stories. If they didn't tell them in the General Assembly, they told me, they told Charnel, and we spoke for them. But those bills were put back because people started to realize you all matter, your stories matter, and they have the power to change a vote. Do not stop. Personhood was only carried over for the year. When Bob Marshall is defeated for the United States Senate because we're going to send campaign, he's going to come back and put it back in. And you all need to be there. And the last thing I will say, you ought to be really proud of yourselves because Lacey Putney, who has been in the General Assembly since 1962, after the first protest, the silent protest, I asked him, have you ever seen anything like it? Now think about what all he's seen since 1962. I said, have you ever seen anything like this session in these protests? And he said, no. He was blown away. Now, not enough to vote the right way, so you got to keep coming, or put somebody else in who will do a better job. But you have the power to help us do what we need to do for all of Virginia's women and all of Virginia's family and all of Virginia's children. And I thank you for taking the time to come here today. Keep the anger up. Keep the energy up. The Republicans are trying to say that Democrats are just stirring it up, but you all are stirring it up because you understand that we are in government by and for the people, and the people are speaking loud and clear. So thank you all very much. Who fights for you. He's got your back. Love it.
And thanks again to Tim Kaine for coming out with us today. We know who cares about us. Another group that fights for us is NARAL Pro-Choice Virginia. Please welcome Caroline O'Shea.
Hey guys, you guys have been great, and I know you've been standing here for a while, so let me hear you. Join me if you know this chant, right? When women's rights are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back! Women's rights are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back! Awesome, great. Well, thank you guys so much. First of all, I want to say from our executive director, Tarina Keene, who you all might have seen on TV, talking about all the stuff we were doing during the session. She couldn't be here today, but she wanted me to thank you all for coming out, and thank the organizers of this great event. Can we get a hand for the organizers of this awesome event? So, for those of you who don't know, NARAL Pro-Choice Virginia, we're a state-level policy and political organization dedicated to creating a pro-choice future for the state. We work in the legislature to lobby for bills. We also have a PAC, and we do work to support candidates and get out the pro-choice vote. And so we've been working on these issues for 10 years in Virginia, and we've been fighting a lot of bills. We've been able to fight a lot of them back, partly because we had some better people in office, but partly because, we were able to fight back. But who knew that all we need to do was say the word vagina, and suddenly everyone across the country was going to be paying attention to this. So that was pretty exciting. When we started getting the facts out about the mandatory ultrasound bill and the transvaginal component, we found out that a lot of legislators like to make laws about people's vaginas, but they certainly don't like to have to talk about them. So we have to keep making sure that they have to talk about the details and the reality of what these bills that they are doing do. But it's really the pro-choice, as Delegate McClellan said, it's the pro-choice activists and voters like you guys who put pressure that helped us defeat the personhood bill this year and the other bills that Delegate McClellan talked about, the HB 62 ban on low-income women's abortion in case of fetal anomaly, and a 20-week ban bill also, which we also defeated this year. So that was all thanks to you guys, so give yourselves a hand. All right. But as we've been talking about today, obviously the mandatory ultrasound bill passed, and something else that hasn't gotten as much coverage is the fact that the governor and the General Assembly in the final budget took out all of the funding for Virginia's Teen Pregnancy Prevention Initiative. Yeah. So they're not going to help let you have choices once you are pregnant, and they're not going to help you prevent unintended pregnancy either. And that's wrong. I mean, I think we can all agree that that's hypocritical, and that's the sort of thing we need to keep fighting. So, and yet they have the audacity to tell us that there's no war on women, right? I mean, what I would say to them is if there's no war on women, if you want us to stop talking about the war on women, stop giving us so many great things to talk about. No one's making them introduce these bills. They're acting like we're the ones who are bringing this up, but it's them who are bringing it up, and we have to remind them about that. So I just wanted to say, Delegate McClellan talked about this a little bit briefly, but it's your voices and the stories and focusing on the stories of real women's lives that makes the difference. And when we're talking about this fetal anomaly bill, I wanted to give you an example of this. When people are talking about bills like this, like the 20-week ban, which would ban abortion in all cases, except with very narrow exceptions after 20 weeks, no exceptions for fetal anomaly or women's health, and the bill about low-income women fetal anomaly, the legislators pushing these bills don't want to talk about what they really mean for women. They don't want to have to deal with these women. So we brought these women to them this session, and we brought 3 women, Christy, Tara, and Amanda, who came and spoke in the Senate Education and Health Committee, and they shared their stories about learning later in their very much wanted pregnancies that their fetus was not going to survive, that there were other complications that were going to make it dangerous for them to continue this pregnancy. And so they told their stories face-to-face to these legislators. And in the Senate and Health Committee, we defeated the 20-week ban bill on a tie vote of 7-7 because Senator Harry Blevins, who usually does not vote with us, heard these women's stories, and he told reporters afterwards, you know, I couldn't look these women in the face and hear their stories about the difficult, really heartbreaking choices that they had to make and tell them that I, as a lawmaker, knew better than them and their doctors and their families what was best for them. So he got it, right? Not in time to then not vote for the mandatory ultrasound bill, but the scary thing is that there were 7 legislators on that committee who heard those women's stories and looked them in the face and then still told them that they thought the government knew better than them what was better for their rights and for their health and their bodies and their families. And that's what we're up against. So the one other thing I just want to talk about really quickly is that obviously the bills we fought this year were not the first salvo in the war on women in Virginia. Everybody remember the TRAP legislation from last year? Targeted regulation of abortion providers that passed? It was, for those of you who don't know, what this bill did last year was single out abortion providers from all other kinds of doctors and outpatient provider clinics in Virginia. And now instead of having to meet the same sort of standards that when you go to get other procedures like colonoscopies or laser eye surgery or having your wisdom teeth removed, which is how abortion providers used to be regulated, now they have to meet the requirements of a mini hospital, which is going to cost them hundreds of thousands, sometimes some cases millions of dollars to have to retrofit to meet these standards when they were already providing safe care. And if that sounds outrageous and ridiculous, it's because it is. The point of this bill is to make it as difficult as possible for providers to be open. And 85% of Virginia counties already do not have an abortion provider. We can't afford to lose any more. So we're keeping on fighting on that. We're working with a coalition called the Virginia Coalition to Protect Women's Health. So I hope you'll all go check out that website. It's coalitionforwomenshealth.org and find out what's going on with the TRAP process and keep educating people and making sure they know this is happening. And also put June 15th on your calendar because that's when the Virginia Board of Health will be having their meeting where they'll be talking about the permanent regulations. But of course, what we really have to do is hold the people accountable who are bringing us this legislation, which everyone has been talking about today. And I just want to tell you a little, everyone's been saying every election matters, and it's so true, and every vote matters, and here's why. In the past, we've defeated this mandatory ultrasound bill and variations of it for years and years. Why did it get through this year? It was because the Senator Ed Hauk from Fredericksburg, who used to be the chair of the Senate and Health Committee, was defeated last year by a margin of 226 votes. And his leadership and the fact that he was the chair of that committee and that we had pro-choice control in the Senate was how we had stopped those bills in the past. And the anti-choice people from across the country, the national anti-choice organizations, knew that, and they came in and they targeted him. And they spent a ton of money in that race, and he was defeated by only 226 votes. So that is how much every vote matters, and we need to be making sure that all of our, I know I can count on you all to all get out and vote in 2013, but you have to make sure that all of your friends and neighbors are voting in every election in Virginia and realizing that they need to be paying attention to who they're electing at every level of government. So, yeah. I thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Like I said, Narrow Pro-Choice Virginia works on these issues, but we can't do these things. We can't elect legislators. We can't fight back legislation without all of you. So please, if you're more interested, please check out our website, which is naralva.org. We have a table over there with some stuff, including a petition against the personhood bill, which, as people have been saying, is not gone. It's been carried over to next year, so we're going to have to keep fighting that next year. So I hope you all check it out. We really appreciate your support, and thank you so much for coming out. Give yourselves a hand again. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
You care about. Please welcome Sharneil Herring.
How's everyone doing? It's so good to be with you all today, and I was following you on Twitter, and I know that there are folks here from far West Virginia and the mountains of the western part of Virginia, and I know that there are people here from the eastern shore of Virginia. Northern Virginia is here. Central Virginia is here. It is a beautiful sight. Needless to say, as you know, we've had a challenging session, and in fact, so challenging that people ask me, well, you know, you all will, on the other side of the aisle, always said no to everything. Well, darn right we say no. We've got to let it be known. If you act to violate women's access to health care, we'll call you out. We've got to let it be known. If you violate a person's right to vote, we will call you out. We will let it be known. If you violate workers' rights, we will call you out. We will let it be known that if you violate the elderly, the poor, we will call you out. We have worked too hard as women, and we have worked too hard for us to get where we are in society, to allow those on the other side of the aisle to roll us back. It was a beautiful sight to see all the women protesting those erroneous and heinous bills that we saw this session. And what's more beautiful is that men were standing by our side saying enough is enough. You stood silently, and yes, you even sat on the steps of the Capitol, which was a beautiful sight. You've heard it before, and I've got to say it again because it's so important. We've got to let people know who to vote for in these elections coming up this year. President Obama is not ashamed to say, I believe in equality. I believe women should be paid the same as a man. Tim Kaine is not ashamed to speak about equality and to speak about freedom for women and men. Virginia is a beautiful place, and they cannot roll back the hands of time. This should be the time when we say all Virginians, black, white, Hispanic, gay, straight, rich, poor, have a chance to achieve, have a chance at economic prosperity. Now is the time. Now is our time to put our feet to the ground. The extreme right has a lot of money. They can fill our airways, but what we've got is our voices to speak. We've got our feet to walk, and we've got our hands to hit those doors and let Virginians know that it is the Republicans that have had a stranglehold over our throats, and we can peel back their hands so that everyone can live free in Virginia and achieve that American dream. So I want to thank you all for being here and everything that you've done.
Molly Vick.
Hi, thank y'all for coming out here today. Over the past few months, we've witnessed tremendous organizing and mobilizing around women's health in Richmond and throughout Virginia. I don't know about how many of you are new to this, but I am, and the excitement and how profound that first day on February 20th, I haven't left yet, and I have no intention to. But some say that it came a little bit late, and in a lot of ways it has. There's a lot of stuff that happened before we were out here, and there's a lot of stuff that's still happening. By the time we lined up at the Capitol in our silent protest on February 20th, actually following the previous year's General Assembly, Governor McDonnell had already signed into law some of the strictest regulations on abortion clinics seen nationwide. These targeted regulations on abortion providers, frequently called TRAP, but they are targeted regulations on abortion providers. It's very specific. They've been pitched through the Virginia State Legislature behind our backs by organizations working nationwide to roll back abortion rights. You've probably heard of some of them, Americans United for Life, and working locally here, Family Foundation, which I'll come back to. It's clear that though we persevered with snow, riot police, mass arrests to fight the ultrasound bill, we did get some changes made, and it's amazing and wonderful what everyone did for that. But this other legislation, this fight against TRAP, targeted regulations against abortion providers, this may be our biggest battle yet. We're fighting against an extreme anti-choice lobby that has the cards stacked in their favor. I don't know how many of you have heard of Victoria Cobb, but she's the president of the Family Foundation of Virginia. Her husband's Matt Cobb, who is the deputy secretary of the Department of Health and Human Resources, who oversees the Board of Health that votes on TRAP regulations. So basically, and they've commented on this themselves on the Family Foundation website. They basically reference that having Matt and Victoria kind of working together is the equivalent of a coup of having stacked the Supreme Court. So they're working around that in the ways that they can. In addition to having the little familial relationship for the Family Foundation, they also have exclusive legislative briefings with Governor McDonnell and the Attorney General, who would like to be governor. I know, can you scroll that up though? Thank you. There we go. Sorry about that. So these lobbyists and their legislative allies are attempting to twist public health issue into a moral issue, and they're claiming this is about women's safety. This isn't about women's safety. First trimester abortions are some of the safest medical procedures. Less than 0.5% of complications, less than 1/100th of the chances of having a serious complication from having a colonoscopy. Minuscule. This is not about women's safety. If these regulations continue as they are, the possibility of additional clinics closing is very real. It's happened in Mississippi, and we can't let it happen here. What happens with that is a reduction in women's safe and healthy because they can no longer have access. Already 85% of counties in Virginia have no abortion providers, and this will seriously infringe on the possibility of that going down tremendously. So we need to speak up. We can speak up because abortion clinics are not outpatient clinics. They're not hospitals, or not outpatient surgical hospitals. They should not be singled out to have requirements that are even more burdensome than hospitals themselves. No other medical facility in the state has ever had to retrofit to current construction codes. MCV couldn't stay open if they did that. Now, our voices were heard silently February 20th, very loudly, excitedly March 3rd, and not just here but around the country, and we need to do it again. We shame the Virginia legislature, we shame the governor. We need to bring attention to these people that are on the Board of Health who don't have any accountability right now. They're not elected officials. We are going to bring that attention. We just went live with a website, Facebook page, Pound Oppose Trap. We'd like to get that trended everywhere. There's memes out there. It's going to go all over Facebook. There's going to be some additional events and actions coming up that we want everyone to get involved in. The first one will be coming up on May 10th. This is that important. This is more important than anything else that we've done. And I'm sorry that I'm not used to being up here. I'd never done anything like this before 2 months ago. And I think that's true for a lot of you too. So I hope that you all will stay engaged and stay active with me. It's changed my life to see the fact that we can make change, but we really need to stay together and stick with it and be willing to go further than we've gone before. Facebook, pound opposed track. Thank you.
All right, hi everybody. As you may have heard, my name is Shelly Abrams, and I run a small local abortion clinic here in Richmond called Capital Women's Health. Thank you to everyone for coming out today. And I just wanted to briefly talk to you guys about how these new regulations are impacting me and my fellow abortion providers. Basically, we're fighting for our lives right now. My fellow independent clinics and I are struggling to adapt to rules created for hospitals, but now apply to small doctors' offices. Unlike St. Mary's, I only have 6 staff members and myself, and I'm trying to create elaborate, ridiculous protocols that are for heart patients, that are for liver transplants, all kinds of ridiculous building requirements, all these things created only to put us out of business, not for the safety of women. I've been running abortion clinics for the past 14 years and have seen over 10,000 abortions performed without major complications. I have been told in confidence from some of my fellow providers throughout the state who wish to remain anonymous, they will shut their doors in 2 years if the building requirements of these regulations stand. Independent abortion providers are fighters, and no one wants to admit defeat, especially at the hands of our own government. But we still have time. The permanent regulations will be voted on by the Board of Health on June 15th here in Richmond. It is time we stopped playing nice and got loud and got angry. It is time to make our voices heard and make some demands on the health department. So I have some demands. First of all, we demand that the Board of Health listen to the physicians and medical professionals who recommended that clinics now in existence not be forced to adhere to hospital-like building codes. Ken Cuccinelli's office told the health department to ignore our highly regarded Virginia OBGYNs who made these recommendations. We demand that the existing clinics be grandfathered in without being forced to adhere to new, ridiculous, and expensive building requirements created only to shut down women's clinics and restrict your access. We demand that Matt Cobb, Deputy Secretary of Health at the Virginia Department of Health, publicly step aside from any and all involvement in regulating abortion facilities. This man's wife, in case you didn't know, is the president of the right-wing Virginia Family Foundation, and for years she's lobbied to get exactly these kind of regulations passed in Virginia, which, by the way, are the strictest regulations on abortion providers in the entire country. And finally, we demand that the Board of Health show us any evidence that these regulations are based on anything remotely related to safety. We demand to see any numbers, statistics, or examples of unsafe abortion care in Virginia. It is their responsibility to implement regulations only for the safety of Virginians, not to further politicians' personal and ideological goals. Right. Independent clinics and the women of Virginia desperately need a public outcry, and we desperately need your voices. We are organizing. We have 6 weeks left. We need bodies at this June 15th meeting. We need to let people know that we are outraged by what our government has done to us. Okay? One last note. I've been asked if I regret getting arrested on our Capitol steps on March 3rd. And to that I'd like to answer a resounding no. So I don't know if you guys want to kind of go out with a chant, but I was thinking maybe this side could say no access and this side could say no choice. So let's start over here. No access! No choice! No access! No access! No access! No choice! Thank you very much. Please come out.
Angels watching over the land of the free. You might say it just doesn't seem right, and you might say
I don't know anybody that's going to help you. This is going on all over the country today, and we have 5 people in Virginia who are Virginia team leaders, and I'd like to introduce them to you. They've been working really hard for the last 8 weeks, 2 months, getting everything ready, getting permits, finding a place for us, getting police and all that. They haven't gotten a lot of sleep, they haven't seen their family much, and they've missed a lot of work. And I'd like you to give them a hand and show them how much we love what they've done for us today. Aaron, Victoria, Donna, Linda, and Brenda. Their spouses now get to spend time with them after.
I think they're wrong. That's why I'm here. I think you all think they're wrong too, and that's why you're here. Yeah, I think I'm right. So, where do we go from here? We're going up. We're going all the way. We're taking this thing until it's done. I hope all of you continue to stay with us, because we're going to continue to organize these things and fight for all of you. You can find us on Twitter, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us at unitewomen.org. unitewomen.org. And we're working with everybody else too. All these other groups that you've seen today, we want to work together. This is a group effort. One organization can't do it. We need all of the organizations to work in unison together. There's a small community, a small spiritual community, and I just want to borrow their phrase. Truth is one, paths are many. We're after the truth, and we're all coming from different paths. Okay? Thank you. You don't want me to sing. I don't sing. Here, we'll get a chant going for you.
Here you go. Give her the mic! Give her the mic! Come on up!
We shall overcome someday.
Again.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Thank you for coming.
Okay, so what's the scary No choice! No access! 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 No choice!
Because society's been structured around bicycles.
No access! No choice! No access! No choice! No access! No choice! No access! No choice! No access!
Go around to the front.
Not the church, not the state. Women must decide their fate.
Not the church, not the state. Women must decide their fate. Not the state. Women must decide their fate. Not the church, not the state. Women must decide their fate.
Not the
state.